It's Thursday, April 24th, 1:02 p.m. I've come to the realization I've known for a little bit. I hate putting myself on the internet. Maybe you'd think otherwise if you saw like my other social media and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. I can't stand it. I hate promoting myself. I hate like having to like act for a video or whatever. Not music videos. Music videos are really fun, but I hate like the whole rigmarole of it all, and I'm sick of it. Because I'm afraid. Honestly, I'm afraid of like putting myself in the whole like sphere of social media and everything. And this is like the most honest way for me to do this. Like it's kind of a test for me. It's maybe exposure therapy. I'm like putting myself on full blast, long form content, and it's sort of forcing me to get involved, to pick up the axe or whatever the phrase is. I don't know, but like to essentially like get to work. Yeah, I mean, fact of the matter is, I'm essentially now like a full-time musician. I quit my job a month ago that I was at for like 3.5 years. And now I'm working this like unpaid internship. I don't think I'll ever get paid. I don't know how long I can stay there. And my car broke down. I'm maybe the brokest I've ever been. I'm at this like point where, it's time for me to like take next steps. And it feels like there's a lot of things kind of like pushing against that. Like I've had like a tumultuous year, not year as in like year to date, but, maybe since like November, it's been like, pretty up and down, and having to make like big life changes and stuff like that. We just moved into this house, so there's like nothing on the walls. My bed is on the floor, so that's why it looks like this. But okay, anyways, crazy year, having to really like, reapproach how I'm looking at my life. And one of the things is that I know I'm really bad at doing, social media content and stuff. And I know why now. I know I'm afraid. I just sat here like in silence for a while, like thinking about it, because this is like, in honesty, like the fifth time I've tried to record this video. And I know why. It's just like I'm terrified of it. I hate putting myself out there because I worry that people will think something other than what I want them to think. Honestly, I want people to like view me as a musician who is, maybe like talented or whatever, or like someone who can, speak to them or whatever. But like, yeah, honestly, like people don't care that much. And it's especially hard to get people to care when it like looks like you're desperate trying to promote yourself. And it feels like that all the time. And then I just get this whole like wave of embarrassment that goes over me. And then I wind up not like posting anything or like telling anybody about my life, or like, giving anyone any context to anything. And I just had to like start somewhere. I don't know. And I've never done like any sort of long form video where I talk really about anything. And I have like a record that took me a long time to make because I was lazy. I made excuses for myself. But I'm really proud of this record, and I need to like, talk about it somewhere, and also just sort of give an outlet for me to talk about my life a little bit. Not that I don't have friends. I have lots of friends and I love my friends. But I can't be like putting things out into the world, I can't be putting things out into the world like an album or music and not give it a little more context, or at least like give it a world to live in. I'm of the opinion that, art needs to be seen by people. And my biggest It's not even really an opinion. It's like, I don't know. I guess philosophically you can argue whether or not something is art because it's being viewed by other people as art, or if it is art because the artist declares that it's art, or if something can be curated and made into art, whatever. I need to, like, put it out into the world, and I need to be supporting my own art. You know what I mean? Like, I need to put my whole ass into it, and I haven't for years. And this is where I'm at. I'm at like an impasse or whatever. Is it impasse? I don't think impasse is a word, but like impasse with two S's and an E. Maybe it's French. But whatever it is, I'm there. And I'm going to start kind of like filming videos like this. I think it'll be both entertaining for me, but also kind of enjoyable. Maybe it just looks like I'm full of myself because I think that I have like a lot to say. But regardless, I have an album coming out and I worked my butt off on it, and it deserves to be a little bit talked about by myself. And it's called Reasonably Honest. It's coming out, I think, June 6th. It's called Reasonably Honest because that was a line in the titular track, Losing. It's not technically the titular track if the track is called Losing, but it's a line in the song. And the song is about a friend of mine that died, if we're getting real. He was a friend of mine when I lived in Long Island, and he started doing a lot of coke. And I noticed when I came back, like the next summer, I'm staying out there, I'm shooting a video with my friend Matt, and we're at this restaurant, and he starts doing coke off of a menu, and he's acting a little different, and it was scaring me a lot. And later that year, maybe it was the next year, if Matt was there, then it was 2020, so then 2021, I didn't really get to go out to Long Island very much because I was finishing up school in May of 2021. And then I went on tour with my band and another band that I was in called Blue Deputy. I was playing guitar for them. And while we're on tour, we're in New York and playing. It was a great show. And then next day we went to Philly. And then the last day we played in Richmond, and it was like a horrible night. I just had the worst night ever. It was hot in there. People are touching all of our fucking stuff. And I walk outside, and I'm like, I'm going to go get pizza. I go to some pizza place, and it's like a microwave pizza that they put in like one of those fucking conveyor belt ovens or whatever. And I like take a bite, and I'm like, ugh, this is just horrible. And then it starts pouring rain outside. And I open my phone, and I look at my Instagram, and then it's like one of my other good friends posted about my friend dying. And I was like, holy fuck, what happened? And, he had overdosed because he and six other people overdosed. 4 other people died on that same day because of fentanyl that whatever dealer had like laced with the cocaine that people were doing out there in this tiny town at the end of Long Island, just north of the Hamptons, because some people are evil, and I don't wish any harm on anyone, but I'm really upset that my friend is gone now. And so I wrote that song about it, and it's called Losing. And to me, that felt like one of the first times where I really got personal in a song, because I had released this album called Caprice in 2020, and it was like kind of like a bunch of pop songs and then a few introspective songs. It was such a fun album, and I love it so much. I love the whole vibe of it all, but I can't believe it just said vibe, but okay. But following up Caprice, I was like I need to, get real. Like, I need to quit making up things. There's a lot of merit to essentially fiction in music or whatever. But, you know, I think I had played that out a little bit, and I needed to, like, you know, talk about my life in my music, because that to me felt like the only way I could really get into it with a lot more heart. You know what I mean? And so I wrote the song "Losing" on a Fender Rhodes, if that's important, whatever. And it's also the first song where I'm recording drums, because I had just learned how to like play drums the year before, basically. And that song meant a lot to me, and it still means a lot to me. And it's, you know, one of my favorite songs that I've ever made, because I think it sounds beautiful and it's real and it's honest. And that's what the line came from. It was, I'm reasonably honest. My word was true, which is kind of like, you know, imagine you're reaching out to someone and you're like, you know, hey, I miss you. Like, I want to hang out with you. You know, I love you, buddy. Let's do something. And then you don't wind up doing anything. But you were being honest about it. You were like, I miss you. I want to hang out. I love hanging out with you. All that. You know, you care about them. And, you know, this can be the same thing in relationships or whatever. You know, you're reasonably honest because you were speaking the truth, but you weren't really doing anything about it. And I think I was still kind of in this stage of, I don't know, whatever the stages of grief are. I was in one of them, and I was very upset at myself. And I kind of like held on to that song for like a year until I felt comfortable releasing it, and then I released it. And I released a few other singles and stuff like that. But I kind of kept going back to it. Like, do I play this song live? And eventually I did. Last summer I played it live, impromptu, as like an encore at my friend's like backyard outdoor show thing that we did. And then I released a live album with all of those songs on it. And that was the first and only time I've ever played that song. And it was in, you know, that town where I knew this guy in it. And it's hard not to, like, you know, get choked up about it or whatever. And, you know, I knew the guy for 3 years, but when I first moved out there, because this was in Greenport, New York, and when I first moved out there, I didn't know anybody. I was 20 years old, so I couldn't, like, go to bars. I had a job where I was a lifeguard, so I wasn't, like, meeting people, or if I met people, it was like, you know, they leave in a few days because they're guests or something. And I wound up making friends, but the first person that really, you know, was like, let's hang out, or like, you know, come to this thing, or like, come to this thing, was this bartender, Seth. And it was at this place where I realized that I could go in and not get ID'd if I get dinner, and then I wait there a little longer, and then the bartenders change or something like that, and I'm sitting at the bar, and then I'll get a beer. So he didn't ID me, but so I went to this place a bunch, and then, you know, obviously he started to recognize me, and then we became friends. He was just like my first introduction into like having a social life there. And yeah, so this was just really devastating, because that was a really important part of my life too, like being out there in the summers of 2019 and 2020. So that's why I wrote a song for him. And I don't write songs for people. But yeah, so that's where the title of the album came from, was that song. And like I said, I released that, and then I released the song "Losing." And then I released a few other songs, and then I realized, like, okay, you know, I've got to like write an album here. You know, it's been a while, and I think I can do something, you know, sort of cohesive here with a lot of the songs that I've written. I was, you know, back and forth in a relationship and wrote a lot of songs right before and right after. And a few of those songs are on here. like I said, I don't want to write songs about people, so I'm not really writing it about that. But I think that I had a little more inspiration, kind of being by myself and having the same kind of realization that I'm having now, where it's like, it's time to go. I had it sporadically across a couple years where I was like going through these waves of making a bunch of music and writing a lot. And so when I realized I had a record, I kind of tried to understand it a little bit, like what is this album? Like, what do I put on it that's already come out? And what do I not put on it? Like, what cohesively works together? But, I realized that so many of these songs are like honest. I mean, they're completely honest. And they're really, about my life in whatever shrouded way I can pull it off. There's not a lot of made up scenarios and fiction going on in this album, with the exception of like the 2 fun sounding songs. Sue me. But, so that's where I was kind of like, all right, maybe I'll call it reasonably honest. And I think that was just very fitting, and all the songs really fit well together, I think. It's all live instrumentation. It's me playing drums, my bandmate Sal playing drums, and then Graham Gibson playing drums. Graham helped me mix a lot of the record. He did most of the mixing on the record, and production here and there. He was like, I kind of would send him a song and I'd be like, hey, like, is this ready for mixing? And then he'd be like, what if we added this, synth line or something like that? And then I was like, yeah, no, that does sound good. So then, there was production elements that he was also doing. But for the most part, like, this album was entirely me. Mixed half by me, mixed half by him, and all that. But, if you hear anything on the record, it's 90%, 95%, I don't know, 90% me. And that's not really going to change that much with my own personal music. And I've thought about making other projects where I get like more people involved. But I think like in the future, I'd like to hunker down and like really make a record that nobody hears until it's like out. And maybe that's a horrible idea, or maybe it's a really good idea. I don't know. But for right now, I have to focus on this record that I really worked a lot on, and I'm starting to transition out of that sound anyways. So it's time to put it out, it's time to like give it its little moment. And a lot of it is a little depressing. I was like recording a ton of it in the basement of my old house, and this is clearly not a basement, and I have natural light from every direction. It's amazing. And immediately when I moved in here, I wrote like much happier music, and I was like, oh, okay. So that was the answer. But I think that sort of forced me to reach to a place sonically and lyrically that I hadn't ever done before. So a lot of this I keep saying it over and over, but a lot of this album was just very honest about like my experiences and stuff. And there's a song called Tiptoes on there, and that one is about not killing yourself. As in like, just ideation maybe, and then, changing your mind. That's what that one's about. There's a song called Burn My Face. That one is, okay, let me just go back to the last thing, because there wasn't a moment where I was going to do that. But, ideation is maybe a thing that just kind of exists in my life. Doesn't have like a huge hold over me, but it's never really something, I like talk about. And so I, wrote a thing where it's, talking about not doing it, talking about how ultimately I don't, and I won't ever do that. So let me just put that to rest. There's another song called Burn My Face, which was about just feeling, extremely overwhelmed. I was in a band that broke up for not good reasons, and I had just had a very difficult relationship. You know, there was a lot going on. I was getting way less work. I was just really depressed and feeling really overwhelmed at the same time, with like the amount of responsibilities I had. And it's just kind of like saying, you know, I want to just go somewhere, lay down, maybe completely naked, who knows, and just burn my face in the sun, you know, like just get away from everything. Which is, you know, it's kind of corny, I guess, but the song sounds really cool. I like it. But you know, it's got these elements of like, you know, growing older and like, you know, kind of realizing you can't really escape that. There's never like a point where you get older. There's not like a point where it's like, now I'm an adult because I paid taxes or something. You know, like it's not like now I'm an adult because I have a kid. I don't have a kid, but you know, I'm giving an example. It's something that just you sort of ramp into as you get older. And that's sort of what a lot of this is about, you know, like there just isn't a moment. It's something that you have to eventually realize, like, this is just here all the time now. Like, you know, you have responsibilities to other people and to yourself and to your own health and, you know, physical and mental health and things like that. And yeah, those are like the main, you know, elements of the record. I don't want to spoil too much, but you know, it starts off with a cassette tape demo of a semi-made up situation where there's, you know, a couple, they're both in difficult spots in their life and come together, kind of save each other, but then realize that there's no real place for each other in their lives now. You know, this sort of like dependency that disappears because they've now made themselves better with each other. You know, like they've like maybe grown together, but now it's like maybe they're bored. They don't know what to do anymore. So it's like, what's the point? That one's called Salt. And that's the first song of the record. And it goes into Losing. And it goes into Beach House Babe, which is about a bad date I went on where I just realized I'm not you. I don't live your life. I don't have as much money as you have, and I don't talk about people the way that you talk about people. And it's kind of funny, but it's also a wacky, crazy song. Then it's Burn My Face. Then, what is it? Tiptoes. Then Mutt. Mutt already came out. And then it's Baywatch Phase. How to Get There. Another one about, like, you know, responsibilities and things like that. And then High and Dry. High and Dry is a song that I wrote when I was 20 in Greenport in Long Island, like the, you know, beach town that I was talking about. And I always liked that song and felt like, you know, now that I'm older, it's like, why not give it another shot? So I re-recorded it. And then Graham, who I mentioned, is playing drums on it. And yeah, now I like it. Now I think it's kind of cool. I maybe overcooked the mix a little bit, but whatever. It doesn't matter. It's kind of a vibe. And then the next one, oh, maybe then it's How to Get There. I don't know. You'll see the track listing when it comes out in like a few weeks or whatever. And then it's Having Met, which is the one I just released, which is, I think, really cool. I love that song. And I wrote it very quickly. And then I had Graham play drums on it. And, you know, I went to his house in LA and then we finished up some stuff on the song and it was a lot of fun. And yeah, then the last song, which is the outro. And I was going to write lyrics for it, but I was like, I can't ruin it. Like, I can't ruin this song anymore. And the song is called Laundry. And it's an instrumental song. I believe it started with a tape demo. and then I sort of built upon it digitally or whatever. And it ends with a recording from a family Thanksgiving. And then very subtly in the background is another recording that me and my friend Sal did together. Almost as if it's playing in the background of like, you know, like on a speaker or something at the Thanksgiving thing. And then there's a surprise at the very, very end of the record, which I think will be really entertaining. But Laundry was essentially about, you know, when you're so down in the dumps, you can't do anything. And then you finally do your laundry. And I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but those moments are kind of beautiful where it's like, this is something I got to do right now. You know, I got to wear clean clothes at the very least. And, you know, so there's like the whole ritual of it. There's the ritual of laundry. There's like, you know, bringing all of your cloths that you've, you know, made disgusting, and then you bring them down to the little station and you like sift through all of them. You put them in, wash them, whatever. And you're on a timer, so you got to kind of like hang around the laundry machine or laundromat or wherever you're doing it. And you take them out and you put them in the dryer, and then you wait again. Maybe you're doing another load. There's just this process where it kind of like, you know, it pulls you out of whatever rut you're in and forces you to kind of like do a thing for yourself. And I find that when I'm in like these deep ruts in my life, the moment I start to like do my laundry, I feel a sense of like pulling myself out of it. I promise I'm not like some incapable man-child. It's just, you know, it was kind of an idea. And maybe I was doing my laundry that day and just named the demo Laundry. And then I was like, oh, this one's called Laundry. What could I write for it? And then started to write out all these lyrics for it and then just never recorded them. So the song isn't like about anything because it's an instrumental song, but that was just like the inspiration for it. And it has that feeling, kind of like this hopefulness that, you know, like rises through the song, where it's like, I'm not going to spoil it, whatever. Yeah, so that's Reasonably Honest. And I'm really excited to tour that record if I can make it happen. I'm excited to talk to people about it. I'm excited to hear people's thoughts on it. I'm just excited for it to be in the world so that I can, you know, be an artist, which I am. But I need a greater body of work. I need to be working towards something bigger than like a single or like an EP. I'm just sick of it. I think that there isn't much. There isn't very far you can't go very far with something small. There's nothing grand about something. There's no famous artists have like a famous EP, and people will be like, I have an exception, and I don't care. But, you know, Pet Sounds wasn't a single. Sgt. Pepper's wasn't a single. And yes, they released singles, but, you know, to generate, you know, the hype for a greater piece of art. And I live for that. I need that to be pushing myself to make art. I need a greater thing to be feeding into, or for it to be a part of. And I hate just making one-off singles, like, because I don't think that they suit me at all. So maybe this is kind of where that stems from, that like why I hate short form content and like, you know, posting on the internet or whatever, because it just doesn't feel great. Capital G great, you know? And I want to make something capital G great, and I don't think I know how to do that with short form content and all that. This isn't something that's capital G great. This is just like a diary for myself. Maybe I'll call it diary. I hate that word, though. I don't know why I hate the word diary. Maybe it just looks like a name of someone that's kind of annoying. Thanks for listening to my diary. maybe I'll be back. I mean, I will be. I'm going to start, doing this from now on, and I don't really care, who watches it and stuff. It's not evil. It's just like content. Okay, bye.